Hi there. So I'm sitting here with Jan Rudge. Now, Jan's in the West Midlands in the UK. I'm in Hong Kong. We've got a 7 hour time difference, so we hope that doesn't show to anybody else. What we're here to talk about is coaching and why it's important in an organisation, and to look specifically at the situation of schools and developing coaching in a school environment. Now, Jan and I have known each other for, we reckon, 12 years now, and we've been coaching each other throughout that time. Now, Jan was in leadership, senior leadership in schools in the UK for about 15 years, and after that has had a terrific career, both as an independent leadership trainer and consultant, part of the National College for Leadership in the UK, and has coached a large number of deputy heads and heads, people in leadership in schools, since leaving head teachership herself. So I'm really looking forward to picking Jan's brains about a whole bunch of things. So Jan, should I introduce myself or will you?
Well, I'll do my best. I always think, Hugh, that whereas I've stuck to the school sector, you've had a much more wide and varied experience of coaching, and you've had some pretty big corporate clients. You've worked for NATO, you've worked in Sydney with a group of women into leadership. You have started out with new businesses, helping them to shape their business plans. And yet you started off in education, in FE, and actually it's come a bit full circle at the moment because you're back working with a group of 24 schools in Hong Kong. So our paths converge once again.
Isn't it funny how that happens? John, I mean, what I'm interested in, first of all, in picking your brains about is the school system in the UK. It seems to me that teachers, school leadership, people in schools are under increasing amounts of pressure. What's going on? I mean, what's it like in schools in the UK at the moment?
I don't think there's ever been a time of greater change than what our school leaders are facing at the moment. It is extremely fast-paced. We have, as you well know, changes in our government again, and the decision to leave the EU may or may not again have more changes coming our way from the school point of view. Yet again, we have a new education secretary. We're waiting to see what that's going to mean for our schools. But certainly leaders are having to take on board change at a rate that I don't think even I had to do when I was in headship, and I thought it was pretty fast change, paced change then. So that is a huge dilemma because you've got government directives, some of which have to be taken account of, changes to exams and the testing system. But you've also got your own school to run and your own students and children to look after. And that's the core business of teaching. And I think we're at a stage where sometimes that is seeming to both myself and to other school leaders to be having to take almost a second step to the needs must that is being imposed on us. And certainly Ofsted and the whole inspection regime continues to have a significant impact on the way schools deliver their business, because we are accountable, and when that is public, the message that goes out about your school is significant, especially in your own community.
So the impression I'm getting is that on a practical basis, on a day-to-day working pattern in school, seems to me like there's very little. There's no time to think. There's no time for things like meetings and strategizing and thinking about big pictures and coaching or whatever. I mean, it sounds like people are hanging on by their fingertips. Would that be fair?
I think many school leaders would agree with you. Meetings are an interesting one because There are some schools that seem to have an inordinately big calendar of meetings, which is very, very time consuming. Um, and then there's the position that some schools find themselves in, that meetings are called, but something else crops up, and then significant people aren't able to attend the meetings, which means that you haven't got that collective capacity always to deliver some of the changes or some of your strategy that you hope to. And so I think it leaves school leaders feeling quite vulnerable at times. The fact that their heart tells them one thing, but their head's pulling them in a different direction. And I think there is both a desire and a need for leaders to feel that they are leading the school that is right for them, that is right for their children. That gets back to the basics, gets back to why we went into the job in the first place, which for most people, I guess, is to make a difference to children's lives.
What about individual teachers, support staff? Thinking about the larger community of the school staff. Are they? I mean, do they get any support? Do they feel that they are getting support in their growth, their development, or is that something that's kind of gone by the wayside because there's no time for that kind of thing?
I think that's varied. It depends on a school's systems and structures. Like businesses, many schools operate with line management, and if you as an individual, whether you're a support member of staff or a new teacher in school, if you feel that you have got a good connection with your line manager, and you feel listened to and you are supported, then hopefully it will be a good place for you to work. But of course, what it all comes down to at the end of the day is leadership and the systems and structures within the school, the culture within the school, and how much it values its people and how much it tangibly shows that to people so that they truly feel it, not just rhetoric.
From our previous discussions, I mean, I've really got a strong impression from you that there are a lot of great teachers, in particular, who,
certainly are,
as you said, came into the profession because of a love of what they do, who are just getting stressed out, and many of them are getting ill. They're leaving the profession altogether, and there's this kind of drain of people who are finding that it's not offering what they thought it was going to offer them. Would that be fair?
Totally fair. And even those people who I would say are amongst the most passionate of teachers and leaders are still going through significant periods of time in a school year when it's they just want out, because actually they're not feeling that they're making the contribution in the way that they want to, but also very, very significantly that it's having a detrimental effect on their own personal lives.
So if this could change, I mean, if something could change to give leadership that space to really invest in their staff and support them through the tough times, the difficulties, I suppose put in a bit of a filter between themselves and the school and the powers that be that are demanding all kinds of measures and so on. I mean, what benefits could there be for people in schools, for some of these great teachers, that people with so much potential that you're talking about? What could change here for the better?
I think without fail, the people that I get to spend time with in school feel that just having a little bit of time, a bit of downtime to think about things in a rational and coherent way is beneficial. And in many situations, and I'm sure you've had the same experience, people come to their own conclusions about what they personally need to change in order to get a better quality either of home life or to enjoy their work more. And I think it starts with both school leadership teams and then the individual, gaining control of themselves and their lives and what they're doing. The government, very often when you hear them, government speak, will say schools have got a great deal of freedom. And actually, in many ways, they're right. They have. But sometimes that gets drowned in the plethora of directives and policies that come into a school. I think if people can have some time and space for themselves to think rationally about why they're making the decisions that they are, why they're choosing to, in some cases, work long, inordinate hours. And I'm thinking of a leadership team I've been recently working with who were talking about emails arriving into the early hours of the morning and starting again, literally a few hours later. Now, I don't think we want to take that individual working pattern away. Some people prefer to work early in the morning. Some people prefer to work late at night. But we shouldn't make it an expectation of the job that people have to work these long hours. And yet it becomes part of a culture. And I think it's a slow drip feed. And it's only when you stop and look back that you realise maybe that, some parameters need to be put into the working day so that work remains as work, but also we value the lives that people have outside of school.
So, listening to you there, burnout is a really significant theme, I guess, in amongst teachers, whether they're leaders or classroom teachers in the education system, because that burnout pattern that you're talking about is one that creeps up on people. It becomes part of the expectation, the way we do things around here, and then just without almost noticing, absence levels through sickness go up, people's health begins to deteriorate, their love for the job begins to deteriorate, their attention to detail and to individual students begins to diminish, their relationship at home get more difficult, and so it's a subtle kind of creeping drift towards burnout. But that in the long run means that people that could be career professionals and the longer the better are getting lost to the profession through, even if they want to stay there, through illness, loss of energy, loss of appetite for the job, forgetting why they're there, all of those kind of things. So where does this difference come from? Is this something that it needs to be a change in government policy? Is this to do with local government, or is this something that you think has to be handled at a school level, or where's the stimulus? Where's the catalyst for change here?
I think it's got to be at school level. We can't expect. I don't think the government. I don't think schools would want the government to shape how their staff and the relationships are developed within the school. I think it is absolutely a school leadership level. And I think if you've got a school leadership team that truly understand the benefit of listening to each other and paying attention and keep revisiting their values, what matters most to them as a school, and making sure the decisions that are made are aligned to those things that are the aspects that matter most in the school, that's where it's absolutely got to start. And because of the school system that we're using here, the Board of Governors, the trustees have also got to be on board with making very clear what matters most in their school or in their group of schools. Once you've got that baseline, then you can build what I believe is a coaching culture throughout the school. But you've got to start with what matters most to us here. And if what matters most is people enjoying the job, our students getting a great deal, this is a great organisation to be part of. If that's the starting point, then how are we going to make it happen has to be the next question. And making it happen is a journey. It isn't a quick fix.
From what you're saying, do you see that as being? Can you boil it down to specifically it's the need for leadership from a school principal, or is this a leadership team issue or a board of governors thing?
I think it absolutely has to start at head teacher principal level, because at the end of the day they're heading up that organisation. I think it is then up to the principal to ensure that she has the backing of the board of governors, and then will start to spread her belief, his belief, to the senior leadership team and get a collective belief about what matters most. And from that senior leadership team, the other systems and structures in the school, it can ripple down through that system. But it has to be modelled and it has to be believed by your senior leaders and your senior leadership team.
Have you got a suggestion or two, talking to, directly to head teachers here? What would be some of the first steps that you'd suggest they could take to start turning this around?
I think right at the beginning, it's the acknowledgement that it is good to have some downtime where you think not just about the big organisational picture, but about your role as a leader within that organisation and what messages you are personally giving, whether overtly or, in your behaviours and the way you deliver your messages. What are the messages that you're actually giving to people about what matters most to you and in your school? It starts with the individual. So I think for an individual to acknowledge, actually, it's good for me to have time to sit down and think about why I'm doing what I'm doing and to think about the impact that their leadership is having on others is a great starting point. So some one-to-one coaching just to get that mindset fixed on, rather than what everybody else is telling me to do, what I believe I should be doing in order to do my job well, in order to gain personal satisfaction and energy from what I'm doing too, in order that I can pass that through the organisation. And I'm thinking of one particular leader who's just gone into a special measures school, a great leader, absolutely turned the culture around in a couple of terms because she has gone out and she's modelled what matters most. But also she has been reflective. She does sit down and think about her strategy. And I think it goes together, that you think about what you're doing, you make decisions on how you're going to do it, you go out and deliver it. Now, whether you choose to do that for your personal belief or you're delivering government message, that's the challenge of leadership.
When you mentioned, getting some one-to-one coaching, now one of the great things about that is if you've got an appointment with an individual, then you're likely to keep it. Whereas if you're just trying to make space for yourself to think, it doesn't really happen. It's a bit like intending to go to the gym at some point today or this week or this month, and it just never happens because it gets squeezed out. But if you've got an appointment with a personal trainer at a specific time, or a class that you're part of, then you make the time and you go. So if nothing else, just having an appointment with a coach can really make a difference. But obviously we'd recommend working with an experienced and skillful coach to help that. But I suppose one thing that I would add to that would be to make it visible. I think that many leaders kind of they regard it as a weakness that they need a coach. Whereas what you're saying is about modelling this, actually showing a belief in coaching, that it's really important to get that help in taking time out, to get a springboard, to think things through, and showing visibly that you're doing that and making that public also makes you accountable, because people might say, so what did you get from the coaching session today or yesterday? And then you can make up your own minds about how much you open up about that. But you make it visible. And how would you feel about that? Is that important?
I think, totally. And I think some of the my most enjoyable sessions, and I believe the most successful sessions I've had, are in a school where the head teacher has coaching, but then so do the senior leadership team, so that it then starts to roll down. And as we will share in another section, there are definite models that schools can take up and use to help them along the pathway to having a coaching culture in school. But that idea of sharing what you're doing and talking about it, I think, is absolutely critical. And I know some of the great leaders I work with are very open in their schools about, I've had a coaching session as a result of that, it made me think, and to share their thinking with people.
Okay, well, in practical terms, Jan, you and I are going to record a separate session to have a look at the models, the approaches, the ways that schools can build coaching into what they do. So, if people have stayed with us this long and they want to know what they could do next, then there'll be another recording that will look at models of coaching in schools. A second thing is that Jan and I have been working together. We've created a brand new Facebook page or group called the Leadership Edge, which is primarily aimed at leaders in schools, although it's not exclusive to schools, to help, I suppose, the community of leadership to share problems, things they're stuck with, but solutions and ideas and encouragement. A third thing is that I'm building up an online video-based course in coaching skills, which certainly some schools in Hong Kong and through Jan, I think some schools in the UK are waiting for and drumming their fingers on the busy desk lids, saying, "Where is it? Can I get it?" So that will be available very soon. Most of it is actually recorded. So at the end of this video, we'll post links to those things, and people you can find them. Jan, can I ask you just one more question? As a coach,
Yeah.
is there anything else I should have asked you?
There is indeed, and it was just going through my mind. We have a great challenge in school in the fact that the word coaching does get used as a very general term. And when I unpick with some of my leadership groups what they understand by coaching, it is more mentoring. And I think the one thing that you and I both want to set out to do is to really clarify when people are mentoring, for which there is a real role for in schools, but also to know that coaching is a very different set of skills with very different outcomes. So that clarity between knowing when you're coaching, knowing when you're mentoring, and actually knowing the skills associated with coaching is what some time ago now I tasked you with. So thank you for creating this series for us. There is a real demand.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear it. I mean, it's probably as big a difference between mentoring and coaching as there is between classroom teaching and leading a school.
Cool.
They are very different skills, but both very important. So all the best. Now, thanks very much for your time. I hope everybody's enjoyed listening in on this interview between myself and Jan. But above all, that you use it actively in some way to make a difference. If it's time to draw a line in the sand and stop waiting for somebody with some common sense in government or elsewhere to make life better, don't wait for that. Time to make it happen. So over to you. Thanks, Jan.
Thanks. Bye.